Good morning and welcome back to Gaming with ADHD. Today we are going to be having a special interview with Blaine Pardoe, author of the new novel Splashdown, and gamer, author for the last 40 years of all sorts of content. And so I'm super excited to have him here. Real quick, do make sure that you are subscribed to the channel, hit the like button, do all the things, because it does help the channel. There will also be, actually not will, there is a link down below. If you haven't already gotten a copy of Splashdown, it is down below so that you can go and order it and get into this fantastic new setting. But without further ado, let's go ahead and bring Blaine in and have a conversation. And let me change my camera. There we go. Good morning, Blaine. How you doing today?
I'm doing great. It's been a busy day.
I'm hoping this is your last interview for the day.
I think it is. I saved the best for last, though. So
we can put it that way. I'll accept it. So that's fantastic. So, all right. So you are an author. Let's start. Why don't you give everybody just a quick background? Who are you? I know I invited my mom, so there's going to be plenty of people here who have no idea who you are. So let's introduce them.
Well, I was born in Newport News, Virginia, and raised in Michigan, moved back to Virginia. I live there now. I worked for 25 years at Ernst & Young. I also worked in the auto industry in an IT capacity for many years. I am quasi-retired. I'm retired from corporate life. I'm now writing full-time. I write in so many genres, it's kind of weird. I write military history books. I write true crime books with my daughter. I write military sci-fi. I do business management books. God, I don't know. There's a few other genres in there that I haven't hit, but basically, if I like reading it, I end up writing a book at some point or another. And I've been doing this, God, I started in college. I was at Central Michigan University. I wrote for the campus newspaper and I wrote for the radio program on campus. I did their commercials. I wrote them. And it's just something that always stuck with me. I got my start in the gaming business writing for FASA, doing their Star Trek role-playing game, and I contributed to the first Battletech supplement, the Technical Readout 3025. And since then, I've been in Battletech, in Renegade Legions, in Tannhauser, and got a whole bunch of other game systems, Twilight 2000, a bunch of other stuff I've done over the years. But primarily, I'm known mostly, I think, probably for Battletech and the true crime stuff.
Okay, awesome. So, real quick, this is going to be this. My channel is called Gaming with ADHD, so do expect a little bit about this. But you mentioned one name real quick, Tannhauser. So for those that don't know, it's kind of this weird French, combat game, I'm going to call it. What did you do for them?
I wrote one of their novels. They actually did 3 novels for Tannhauser, and I wrote one of them.
Oh, well, now I'm going to have to go look at that. I actually have a copy of Tannhauser up on my shelf. I didn't even realize there were novels for it. So.
You know, they weren't wildly successful. They canceled the game, I think, like a month after the novels came out.
Okay. Yeah, I remember it was kind of a big deal. Fantasy Flight bought it from the French company that was making it and then just buried it. So yeah. When you brought that up, I was like, wait a second. I haven't
It's
heard
not
this
my
in years.
best moment, but it was fun. You know, I like writing in the gaming industry. Gaming is part of who I am. I'm 60 years old, but I'm a 14-year-old trapped in a 60-year-old body. It's not the years, it's the miles, you know, and I got to be honest with you, I have a blast playing games. And so, yeah, I'm a gamer at heart, always have been, and probably always will be.
Okay. So then let's pick up with that. So if you're a gamer at heart, always will be, how did you get into gaming?
I started on regular wargaming, Tactics 2 from Avalon Hill, and Squad Leader, Panzer Leader, Panzer Blitz, always played those. And when role-playing games come out, I still have on my shelf over here, I have the first edition of D&D. I bought it in 1972, my white boxed edition, which is now worth more than most of my game collection. But it was we played the old school D&D, and D&D was just it was great because we didn't have anything to pattern it off of in the early days, and there was no internet, so you really didn't know how to run a campaign. You didn't know how to I had guys bringing 10 rolled up characters into a dungeon because I'd kill 8 of them in the session. So it was a blast. And role-playing games I just absolutely loved. The Star Trek role-playing game from FASA was something I really enjoyed both writing for and playing. And when I sent in a supplement to FASA for the role-playing game for Star Trek, they said, "This is great, we'll buy it. But have you heard about battle droids?" And I said, "No." And the next thing I know, they'd said, "Okay, well, we're renaming it to Battletech, and here's some stuff, and we'd like you to write for it." So it was a good time.
Okay. So what did they have you writing in originally?
They handed me, in some cases, pictures of battle mechs and said, "Come up with the stats and then write the blocks for the tech readout of the history of the mech and stuff like that." In some cases, they gave you the stats and the mech, and you just had to write who the best pilots were and where was it used and what variants, etc., were out there. So it was a mixed bunch of that stuff, but it was a lot of fun. And it got me started doing Battletech. I did Snords and Regulars. I did just a ton of product over the years, and it was a lot of fun to do.
Okay. So you started doing that about 1986, I think
it's 1985.
Okay.
So yeah, it was 1985.
Okay. And so then about a year later is when your first novel came out. What made you decide to make that jump from just either writing game rules or short fiction to, I want a whole book to myself?
Well, the actual first novel was sometime in the 1990s. It was Highlander Gambit. I don't remember the exact year on it.
1995, according to Sarna.
All right, there we go. Okay, yeah, it was my first true novel. Back in the old days, we did what was called grovel for a novel. You went to Gen Con with your novel proposals, and you went before C.M. Lewis and company and said, "Okay, I got 2 or 3 ideas. Is this my year?" And it was funny because when I did it, I had 2 great novel proposals, and then at the last minute, I threw together like 2 paragraphs that eventually became Highlander Gambit. I went through all 3 of them thinking, well, this one he'll easily discard. And he was like, "No, that's the one we want you to do." So, you just left that. It was kind of fun to do the books back when Rock was doing them. Circulations were a lot larger than they are now. Back in the old days, when you were in the 90s cranking out Battletech books, I mean, they were on regular science fiction battle, or bestseller lists and stuff. Mm-hmm. The reader count's gone down dramatically over the years, but that's part of the gaming industry too.
Yeah, no, I remember buying a lot of those novels. I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and I did my mission in Brazil. And when I came back, I was a window washer. And I actually washed windows at a bookstore. And so I was always going in, is there a new Battletech novel? Is there a new Battletech novel? So this was about 1998. So I totally remember that. And yeah, just nowadays, you don't, if it's not D&D or a video game property, it's really rare to see, a novel like that on the shelves. So
yeah, bookstores. I don't even like going into bookstores anymore because what you're seeing are, the top publishers only products. And I'm finding there's a lot of great folks out there writing who are indie writers or who are writing for that middle or lower end publisher that are really producing fantastic products. I'm enjoying those, I think, more than I enjoy some of the bigger league products that are put out, and so, it's all a question of your preference, etc. The internet's really changed everything in that front.
Yeah, and especially with self-publishing, being able to just handle everything yourself from top to bottom. You can curate your own audience,
Yeah.
Instead of having to, grovel for the novel. Find get somebody to accept it and then publish it and then do all the marketing behind it. You're just like, nope, I'm going to do it. So
yeah, well, and I've reached a point now too where publishers just call me up and go, "What do you have that we might be interested in?" The age of needing, I have an agent, but I haven't had to use my agent to actually pitch for stuff for a long time. I've got publishers lined up that, if you've got an idea, give me a call type thing, and let's talk. So it's kind of nice from that perspective. The industry's changed so much. The indie publishing stuff, I think some of it is really good. There are some people who are just giving the indie side a bad name, but I watch carefully who I pick up now, and I'm reading some absolutely phenomenal books.
Sure. So then, oh my gosh, I just blanked.
It happens.
So first novel then was Highlander Gambit. Yep. Did you stick just to Battletech at that point, or did?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I love Battletech. I've always loved Battletech. It was fun. Battletech was an interesting universe to be writing in, and it had strong female characters throughout, which I really enjoyed. I always call it beer and pretzel science fiction. It wasn't hard science fiction. When you get over to the Renegade Legion stuff, the math and the real hard sci-fi of that was, I loved it. I absolutely loved it. The Renegade Legion stuff is really fond in my memory, but honestly, I enjoyed the fact that Battletech had this kind of light, fluffy sci-fi, it wasn't, you weren't crunching a lot of numbers other than when you played the game.
Sure. It's Battletech. Let's not say you're not crunching numbers.
Yeah, I mean, Battletech is an exercise in basic math, but and that's not a bad thing either. But it's just not the hard crunch of like a David Weber doing Honor Harrington.
Right? Like
which he's
Lagrange points.
yeah, you're not having to do that. And I think to a certain degree, Renegade Legion got into that, which I liked. And with the new series that we're doing, Splashdown, we're much closer towards that side of the spectrum than the beer and pretzel side. But it's okay. You got to go with what people want to read type thing.
Well, and there's an argument to be made for both. I listened to I want to say it was a Great Courses lecture on science fiction. I think that's what I'm totally blanking on the name. But it was a history of science fiction, and the thing that stuck out most to me was that a lot of science fiction isn't about the science. It isn't about being able to write fiction about calculating Lagrange points and how long will it take to get to this star, but it is some sort of a sociological exercise, trying to look at some sort of a concept, but break it out in a way where you won't necessarily offend one group or another, but actually get them to think about the ideas. And so I think having the soft versus the hard is great because you can focus on the story, focus on what's important.
Yeah, the tech sometimes gets in the way of science fiction. I always joked the funniest thing in Battletech was always what color do the lasers fire? And it's like in the real world, you barely can see a laser, and that's only if it's hitting dust. Don't worry about it. But in Battletech, there were these long debates and arguments about what flavor the lasers were based on the caliber and things along those lines. So it's one of those types of things where I like more of the purist type thing. When I look at a mech and somebody tells me it's carrying 100 missiles, and I look at it and go, where are those things stored? And how the hell are you actually getting them to the launcher if they're stored in that location? Like there's literally like a black hole in some mechs where things are stored because it doesn't measure up well. And that's why when we did Land Sea, I spent a lot of time kind of let's make these so that they actually do what they're equipped to do, not what we think we can hide in them somewhere.
No, I think that's a fantastic point. You mentioned that, and one of my favorite mechs, like most everyone else, is the Mad Cat, and how are the missiles getting into those shoulder pods? Let's be honest.
Yeah. There's a whole lot of what I call hand wavium that takes place. It's like magic. But it's okay because when you're writing in it, you can suspend a belief about it. You don't have to explain that, and it's best if you don't. I learned that over the years. But it's better to kind of just tell the stories. And when I look at science fiction at a broader level, it's more stories about good characters, and you develop good, strong characters that readers identify with, and you can put them in any situation and any tech level. And as long as the readers can relate to those characters, you're telling a good story. And it can be fantasy, it can be science fiction, it can be anything.
Sure, absolutely. So then from that era, we'll say the late 90s to mid 2000s, who was your favorite character that you were writing?
I think out of all of them, I would go with Trent in Exodus Road, because Trent was a traitor. It's really hard to make a traitor a good character that's enjoyable to read about, that you would actually care about. And I think I accomplished that with Trent. I think I did. Now, I'm sure there's fans out there that will disagree with that, but I think Trent was a good character. And I think Paul Moon is a good character because we saw his arc kind of change completely. And, he was the bad guy. He was a jerk. He was a bit of a dick. Then, we see by the time we get through Forever Faithful, you realize that he's actually an incredibly honorable man. And has realized the errors of his ways and has kind of become something much more. And I always like that kind of a character journey. To me, that's fun.
Okay. And so, Exodus Road, fun that you bring that one up. So, Exodus Road, for those that don't know, in Battletech, at least we're going to say until recently, I'm going to say that was kind of the end of the clan saga is how I'll put it.
Yeah. The Twilight of the Clans series.
Right. Exactly. The Twilight of the Clans. So at the time, I think Stackpole was still writing, and I always kind of considered him like the core author for Battletech.
Yeah.
But how was it for you to actually get the first book in that series, as opposed to the core author?
It was fun. We had some debates about, the original plan was I was going to steal a starship, and the argument was made during one of our writer sessions that the clans would never just leave a map to their home worlds on a starship. They would have segments of it, but not the whole thing. So the decision was made, well, we need a traitor character. And so it was great. I had really enjoyed getting that slot and being able to kind of kick that off. It was fun to do, and it was a fun character. Another favorite character of mine is Archer Christofori from the trilogy that I did, starting with Measure of a Hero. He was a great character as well, and I liked him because he was an older character. he had been there, done that, and had a less than glorious military career. But when his sister gets killed, it's like, okay, game on. I'm going to saddle back up and I'm going to go kick ass. And the Archie Christofori stuff, I think, was a lot of fun. And it let me actually introduce characters I introduced in Sourcebook only, like Snord's Irregulars. So you got to see Cranston Snord and Rhonda Snord actually in some of those books. And that was a lot of fun to do too.
Yeah, I know I've read those, but I will admit it's been quite a few years, so I don't remember them as much as I should. I was thinking this morning, I'm like, oh, I probably should have grabbed a lot more of his stuff and read it up.
You're fine. It's best to stick with the memories. I don't read, the funny thing is when you're writing a book, you end up reading it about 5 or 6 times, by the time you're done it, and you never go back to it. I don't ever. So there's been a couple of days where I walked over and I'll go over to my bookshelf and pull one of my old books off. I'm like, I wonder how this actually reads. And I'm reading it, and it's funny because you read it and it's almost like a whole new book, and you're like, wow, did I write that? Wow. I don't remember that. Wow. It's kind of fun that way, but it's also a reminder of how your memory goes.
But I mean, should also be interesting about how you've evolved as a writer. I mean, do you ever go back to your old stuff and be like, oh, really should I have done that?
Yeah, well, not so much that, but there are things I would go, oh, I wish I'd add a sentence here, or there. You read it and go, I would have added one more thing. If I were redoing it now, I would add something to it slightly, just to tweak it. It's not anything major, but my writing voice is still in the bandwidth of where I started almost.
Okay.
Although the level of complexity of the writing has dramatically increased.
All right. So actually, that's one question I meant to ask a little earlier about the writing. Are you a discovery or an outline writer?
Yes.
Okay.
It depends on what I'm working on. I used to do detailed outlines for every book. I have moved away from that as I've moved into writing about ensemble character casts. Okay. And I do different kinds of outlines. I go, what am I going to do with this character in this arc? And what's the key scenes that I need to have for that character? Then I look at how I combine those characters, etc., and flow the story out that way. I still will occasionally do an outline. I'm going to be doing, but a lot of times what I'll do is I'll do maybe 2 pages of a book and say, here's 2 pages of the book. This is what I want to produce. And, from there, I'll just get cranking. Because the story goes where the story goes.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Well, I mean, I think there has to be an aspect kind of both. Like, you have to have an idea of where the story's going, but until you're getting down to actually put the words on paper, like it's not going to flow out now. And I say that as a base amateur writer anyways. I've written a couple of very short things, but
well, I always viewed it as like a contract. So you do this outline, you do a 15-page outline, you hand it to the editor and go, this is what I want to produce. And then they tell you, well, here's what you ought to change. Make changes to it. You go, okay, is this what you want me to do? When I did that with Hour of the Wolf, everybody was like, yes, that's what you should be producing. And I produced that. Then when they got it, they said, well, we want to do a whole bunch of changes beyond that. And it was like, well, wait a minute. I went through all the effort of outlining it, getting you to approve the outline, and now you want to do a bunch of different stuff completely. What was the whole purpose of the outline again? And that's when I started really questioning how useful were outlines. And I found that that's very editor dependent at this point.
Okay. So that's actually a nice little segue. So the Hour of the Wolf. Okay. So again, for the Battletech non-fans, this is kind of interesting because I think you could call it both an end to the clan saga, but then it's also a beginning of a brand new clan saga.
Well, it's
So,
the end of the Dark Ages and the start of the Ill Clan era.
sure, right. I mean, it's definitely that era breakdown. But I just mean as far as like the original whole clan invasion was about the clans coming in and taking Earth. And
Yes.
so Hour of the Wolf is they take Earth.
Yeah.
And then obviously there's going to be, stuff following on from that. So I mentioned how I kind of assumed Stackpole was the central author for a while, but then especially recently it seems like, well, up until recently it seems like you had kind of taken over that role. Is that fair to say, or is that more ended up
I did the books I was asked to do.
Okay.
Whether that was central or core, I think clearly, there was a bunch of books like Divided We Fall, Children of Kerensky, Rock of the Republic, and then, which are all the prelude books into Hour of the Wolf. Yeah, I did those. Whether I took Stackpole's role or whatever, I don't know. I wouldn't, I've never thought of it in that light, but to me, it was just, hey, they asked me to do these books, and I was like, okay.
Okay. So how did you end up being the one to get to write Hour of the Wolf?
I don't know if it was a get to. Yeah, it was a tough slog. Brent told me early on, Brent Evans, who was the line manager at the time, he's like, I think you're the guy to write this. And I said, okay, I'll do it. And that was literally the depth of the discussion, at the time. And there was a lot of talk of what we needed to have happen and who the key players were in that. So I inherited a lot of characters that, frankly, I didn't think were well developed and I didn't necessarily like, but you got to work with them, because they're established canon characters and stuff like that. So, it's a tricky book. It was a very difficult book to do and a difficult book to set up for, but I enjoyed it. It was a fun book. When it was done, I was very happy. And, I was told that as of last year, it was the #1 selling fiction book that Catalyst ever produced.
Awesome. So, how, outside of like obviously writing the fiction itself, how much input did you have as far as deciding, we'll call it major events, who
Well, there were things I said out loud that were definitely in the book. Because I said, first of all, there were scripts running around that Herb Bias and other guys had crafted for what they thought would happen or how they wanted to see it done when they were doing everything based off source books. And they were just ridiculous and stupid, for lack of better definition. They were going to have Devlin Stone beat Alaric in a duel. And I'm like, you got a clan warrior who's young and in his prime, and you got a 100-year-old man going against him who hasn't piloted a mech, since the jihad, and he's going to beat him. Give me a break. To me, there were things that were batted around, and there were things I said that were very blunt. For example, I said, look, for this to work, the Republic has to die. And there were people that were arguing against that, to be completely honest. There were people going, no, let's not. What about the Republic fans? And I'm like, look, if you're going to end the Dark Ages, the Republic has to die. It's just got to happen. Because if you don't, if you do this piecemeal, you end up with little razzle hog type situations where we've got a little government on 4 or 5 planets that we have to nurture all these years. And I'm like, why can't we just destroy a faction? And, the Republic had this taint from the MechWarrior Click era. I'm like, it's got to go. There's certain things I didn't have control over, about which characters I used and stuff. The Battle for Terra was all of mine. I mapped that out. And I really did it by looking at the Star League source book, the original Star League, hard to find source book. And I was like, gee, when Kerensky invaded Earth, he really planned the logistics side of this brilliantly. why don't we have a clan leader actually demonstrate some intelligence for once and actually plan the invasion of an entire planet like a regular military operation? Not be an ignorant, so honorable that he loses clan guy, which that trope had been beat to death in Battletech time and time again. It's like, oh, how do you beat the clans? Well, we just use their honor against them. Gee, I think I saw that episode like twice,
last season
rerun, and a lot of times in rerun. So, I was like, let's if Alaric is going to take Terra, he's going to take Terra, and he's going to plan for it. He's going to execute, and he's going to do it correctly. And that's where I went with it. And that was kind of the core of what Hour of the Wolf is, because by the time you're entering Hour of the Wolf, the battle's on. They were jumping into Terra at the end of Children of Karinsky, and it's like, game on. Okay, we're coming in.
So I will admit, Brent reached out to me, mentioned Hour of the Wolf. He's like, you've got to read it. You've got to read it. And I hadn't read Battletech fiction in a long time. I love the fact that like when a new book came out, it was the next chapter, or it was approximately the same time frame. So I missed a lot of the early stuff. So I'm jumping into Hour of the Wolf cold.
Ooh.
So the main question I have is, you mentioned Alaric's going to plan. How many games of Risk did he play to plan the invasion of Terra?
That was a joke that came up during, because everybody was like, well, where's he going to land? What are you going to have him do? And I was like, he's going to land in Australia. And they're like, and I think it was Ray actually said something along the lines of like, I'm not going to take Australia. He'd want a base of operations that was surrounded by a body of water for protection. It makes absolutely perfect sense. I'm not going to drop, in England, for example, where you're too close to Geneva, which is the headquarters of the Republic and stuff, the capital. I will land in Australia. And Ray made the comment. He goes, so you're just basically doing Risk. And I was like, well, think about it. And we actually, the draft I submitted actually had that line where Tucker Harwell was saying, what is it? Is Alaric playing Risk? And the editor, because Alaric's like, the military guys are all dumbfounded. Like, I can't figure out why he dropped there. And he's like, haven't you guys ever played Risk? And the editor struck that in the final thing. So it's become kind of an ongoing joke at this point, but it is what it is.
So I mean, yes, theoretically we've all played Risk, and yes, whoever takes Australia and manages to build up that massive army and just go out, usually ends up winning the game. Was that a conscious decision? Or
no, it was just, I needed a good base in Australia. There's a lot of Australian Battletech fans too. And I thought, well, this is great because they're really going to enjoy that they'll be able to play battles in their home country. And so a little bit of it fell into that. I could have landed in Greenland if I wanted, but who the hell wants to blow up Greenland?
Then it's all cold.
Yeah, that's not fun.
Okay. So, and I think this kind of answers, lack of a better way to put it, a concern. Cause like I said, I dropped into Hour of the Wolf cold. And it's basically just all battles all the time.
Oh yeah.
It's like, here's a battle. And then we're going to jump forward 30 days or whatever. And we're just going to focus on this next battle. So one of my criticisms of it, and I'd been meaning to do a review and I just never have because I'm a disaster, but whatever, was that there wasn't a whole lot of character development. It was just, nope, we're going to go in, we're going to do the battles and just move that all along until the final scene.
Well, we did a lot of the character development and the establishing of who the characters were and stuff in the previous books. So when you read Divide We Fall, you get the start of the Wolves Dragoons involvement that will culminate in Hour of the Wolf and the events that follow. And same thing with Children of Kerensky really establishes Alaric's plans and established Chance as a character and my take on Alaric, based on what we had, etc., as well as Malvina. So you really have to look at those kind of prior books. To me, this all could be one big book.
Okay.
If you took those novellas and stuff and squished them into Hour of the Wolf, you get a big book. There's a lot of reasons you don't do that. I think if it's just too big of a book. This isn't the Black Library for for Warhammer 40K, where I just downloaded a book and it's 8,000 pages long, and I'm going to be reading it for the next year, but I'm going to slog through it. We didn't want to do that. So we did the build up, the character build up really begins in those books.
Okay. Let's see. And give me 1 second. Okay. So all right. So last question on Hour of the Wolf. Malvina Hazen. Was it your idea to kill her off?
Yes.
Okay.
A lot of that, there were subtle ways we were going to kill her. I think I ended up changing the exact way she died. I'm trying to remember what the original draft was. There was a whole argument about, or not an argument, a discussion about how she would die and what people wanted to see in that scene. And I think the biggest change was that she's slowly bleeding out, and you have Stephanie Sistu sitting there in a chair watching her bleed out, which I thought was to me, that was fun, because it's like you kind of want to make sure the Wicked Witch is dead. And I think that was appropriate, and it also gave a little bit of a darker edge to the Stephanie Sistu character, as well, which I think is important.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, no, it was that was a bit of a rough scene. That end. No, I mean in a good way, but I mean it was especially again, kind of, I've got that kind of dark area as far as the fiction goes, but I think, or was it your idea for the planned changes to how the Falcons are going to go? Because the Falcons, when they originally came out, they were generally honorable. They were just jerks about it.
I inherited the Jade Falcons of the Dark Ages, and they were just homicidal freaking maniacs, and Malvina was batshit crazy. I mean, that was something I inherited, and you got to work with it. And I had the option of trying to change it, and then I'm like, why do that? If they're that way, I don't want to jar the reader by changing who they are. That's been established. I mean, Malvina crashed one of her own starships into a city that she controlled just to kill the people she was fighting there, who were her people, by the way. So, I mean, that's the level of crazy you're dealing with, because Malvina is really the darkest side of the clans, which is, I'm going to win, and I'm going to be brutal as hell when I win. I'll burn half the place down. She's kind of the Thanos of Battletech. I'll wipe out half of everything, but I'm going to be standing triumphant at the end. To me, I always looked at the Jade Falcons as honorable. And so at the very end, to be able to pull them in and say, look, the original Elizabeth Hazen was, in the Black Watch. And to be able to take the Jade Falcons and morph them into that, was something I felt was very important, because it said this is we purged off all the dipshit side of us. What's left is the honorable side.
Mm-hmm. No, I actually think it was a really fitting end. End/beginning. There were like Hour of the Wolf, like literally is just straight up full of transitions.
Oh yeah.
We're going to end this and we're going to start this. And I think you did it really well.
Thank you.
Even, being the mess that I am,
You just missed the prequel.
Right. I came into the season finale or the series finale not knowing what was going on.
It's like tuning into season 8 of Game of Thrones and going, well, this sucks.
Actually, I do want to highlight this one. I've been bringing a couple of chats up as they come through. My friend Mechanical Frog from Twitter says, I appreciate that you recognize that the Jade Falcons did have an honorable side worth saving.
Oh, they always did. I mean, we established even in the Anvil, you have Stephanie Sistu making the knife. That, it's a small novella, but it was like 2 years before Hour of the Wolf. We had Stephanie Sistu make the knife and give it to Cynthia, who is the one that ends up killing Malvina with it. So, I mean, it was like literally we had Chekhov's gun here, going through this process. So there were lots of Easter eggs in the prequel material that kind of fed into this, that told that arc. I think the Jade Falcons were honorable. They had, but Malvina understood that from a clan perspective that, what makes you right is winning.
Mm-hmm.
And as long as you win, regardless of how you win, doesn't matter how you win. As long as you win, everybody will follow you and everybody will adore you and everybody will do what you want. And they'll be as brutal as you tell them to be because they want that next victory. And that's the essence of her character. That was how she rose to power. That's how she became who she was. So she had to go down hard.
That's one way to put it.
I mean, I killed a lot of I am responsible for more clan deaths than anyone, I think.
No, that's a fantastic way to put it. So, okay, so then last question I'm going to ask about Hour of the Wolf, and then we're going to jump into talking about Splashdown and Land and Sea. I want to mine Land and Sea, so if I don't ask something that I should know, because again, remember, I'm bad at this, feel free to volunteer any information you can.
Well, you're starting on the right book, okay?
I have you to thank for it. But anyways, all right, last question about Hour of the Wolf. Was it always going to be Clan Wolf that won, or were there arguments made for other potential ill clans?
I was told when I took us over that Clan Wolf was going to win.
Was that always the plan from the
That
Fossa
was always
days?
the plan. When Lauren went so far as to say when he created the Alaric character in one of his books, and I don't remember which one, that Alaric was specifically created as a character to be the person that would take Terra. So that was going to happen. It was preordained. I know a lot of people have been, oh, you plot armored them. And I'm like, no, this was, when you're writing in a shared universe, there are parameters you don't get to change. And when everybody says Wolf is going to take Terra, they're going to take Terra.
So, but what, like I said, was that preordained back in the Fossa days, or
no? It was. I would say during the Dark Age era novels is when that concept came up.
Okay. Yeah, because I remember, I don't remember who I was speaking to, but they had mentioned that, like a lot of people get upset about like the Dark Age and the Jihad, but I was told by someone that essentially that was always the plan. Like before Fossa shut down, that is essentially where the storyline had been plotted out to, or at least through the Jihad.
Yeah, and I'm probably speaking a little bit out of turn because there's parts of this I don't 100% have, but based on my understanding, what happened was when Dark Ages rolled out, it was, this is, Jordan kind of went, this is what the Dark Ages, the Click Mech era is going to look like. And in that there was a jihad with the Word of Blake, and we were still writing, the original series, classic Battletech novels and Mech Warrior novels. And it was kind of like we set the stage up for the jihad. I mean, I think the last book that was written in the original series was the ships arriving in the system, the Word of Blake ships.
Mm-hmm.
And, we always knew there was going to be a jihad, but I didn't know it was going to last 11 years or 17 years of game product. I mean, it was just with no novels. I mean, it was just source book hell. It was way too long. We got stuck there because no one really until Brent Evans came along, nobody really wanted to try to pry us out of the Dark Ages and move into the next era. So you were kind of stuck. You were right. You're going to have to be stuck doing jihad era source books. And there's only so much you can write about the jihad. And the jihad was weird. It broke all the laws of physics. Like, where'd you get all these starships and how'd you build them in the time frame you did? And you started out with 4 battalions, but now you've got armies that can attack everywhere and your technology's better. And there were so many things that it was like, oh, I hated the jihad. I just hated it. It was bad. It just, don't get me wrong. I know there's Word of Blake fans out there, blah, blah, blah. Great. I think it's wonderful you enjoy that faction, but God, let's face it, that was depressing.
Okay. So I'm going to bring up this question just because I do think it's a little relevant.
Sure.
But Legion of Myth says, I noped out of the Battletech game with the FedCom Civil War and the novels with Dark Age. Please help me and tell me why I should go back and read them or pick up the new era.
Please help. Wait. We'll go back. Please help me and tell me why I should go back and read them or pick up the new era. I haven't read a lot of the new era stuff after Hour of the Wolf for a lot of reasons, obviously, but I'm not reading a lot of the new era stuff. I would always say it's worth reading new material. Going back and rereading the old books is good. I wouldn't waste a lot of time with the Dark Ages. The early Dark Ages books were a hot, stinky mess. They were written by people who didn't understand Battletech, didn't understand the universe, didn't understand or care about the canon. It wasn't until you get the last 2 or 3 years of books in the Dark Ages where the original authors like myself were brought back in to actually kind of try to shore things up and sort through that mess to make it into something useful.
Got it. Okay. Well, would you at least say they should, because I know you've got a timeline on, I think it's on your website. I'll dig it up, but should they at least read the series up through Hour of the Wolf?
Oh yeah. That's a great launching point, period. And you can decide at that point whether it's worth continuing on.
All right. I think that's a great way to, and even if you don't continue on, you at least got the end of the story.
Right.
I'm not sure I understand.
Oh, stop it, Siri. My Apple Watch, I kid you not, the last 2 weeks, out of the middle of nowhere, it's just going to start I didn't find that information you were asking for. I didn't ask you for any information. Why are you talking to me? And it always happens at wonderful times. So there we go. All right. Now that I'm still a disaster. All right. Let's move into Land and Sea and Splashdown. Let's start with the elevator pitch. What's the elevator pitch for Land and Sea?
The elevator pitch is an alien force has landed in the world's oceans for the last 5 years. They've conquered 2/3 of the planet because they control the oceans, and they finally make themselves known. And this is the story of a large ensemble cast of characters who has to deal with this new reality and deal with every coastline in the planet being a battle zone.
Okay. So the top of the book mentions our friend Brent. So it says Brent Evans' Land and Sea. So when did he come to you with this idea?
Oh God. I want to say 2013 or something. We started talking about it. It was a long time ago. And Brent kind of came in with some very vague, I want to do a thing about aliens in the ocean. We hadn't even really talked about the mecha action piece of it at that point. It was like, look, I want them to just, and he said, when we do the game, I want people to be able to fight the scenarios, etc., in their own hometowns. So if they lived in Jacksonville, Florida, you could pull up Google Earth for Jacksonville and be able to use the map to fight your battles type thing. And I said, okay, so that means we have to look at near future, and that starts a whole different set of discussions. And we went down to, Brent had some brilliant ideas, and I amplified those and qualified those and kind of said, okay, well, here's how we're going to have to tell the story, and how do we launch this? Because it's going to be a tabletop game. It's going to be an RPG. It's going to be a whole bunch of different things, some of which we'll be announcing soon. And if we're going to do that, how do we establish that for the readers? Because if you think back to Battletech, it's always a question of, so where do I start with the books? And you always tell somebody, go to the Grey Death Legion books and start there, read those, then you can figure out where you want to go. We needed to have that core set of books that 10, 15 years from now, we could say, somebody goes, well, how do I get into this? You go back to those, start there, and that's going to be your launch point. So the 3 books that we're doing, Eric Crew, who's on our Creative Juggernaut team, said, I don't see these as 3 separate books, but we can't walk in and say, let's produce an 800-page book, to kind of crank us out. So they're really, the story is, it's a lot like the Lord of the Rings in many respects. And so like the next book in the series, Riptides, is really like, it reminds me in many respects of the Two Towers. It takes you through that Tolkien-esque kind of structure from the Lord of the Rings. So, there's a lot more battles, and the battles are kind of the focus of what you'll see in the second book. And then the third book, there's no magic end to this because this is an ongoing series. So anybody who thinks we're going to do an Independence Day and take out the mothership with a virus, blah, 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 ain't happening.
It would put a lot of dampers on future releases.
Yeah, that's not a thing. This is more, it sounds silly because we're talking about aliens that invade through the oceans. This is more real world based than that.
No, again, back to our comments about hard versus soft sci-fi. I mean, yeah, there's a way to do realism even when you're throwing in some of the fantastical that right. You just have to handle. Yep, sure, that works that way. Yeah. So what did you think about it when Brent first proposed it to you? Was it like, oh, that'll be awesome, or was it like, I don't know about this?
I try to always approach something with, let's see where we take this and then form an opinion. Because if it goes down, I tell them flat out, if it's not something I like, I'm not going to do it. It's part of it. If the part of being part owner of Creative Juggernaut is I get to pick what I work on. And I'm not going to spend my time working on stuff I didn't want to do. So, as we went through it, I really took a look at, is this going to be fun to write? Is it going to be fun to read? Is it going to be entertaining? Is it going to be different enough that it stands out for people? And once I realized, like, as we were crafting it, that this was really going to be something people hadn't seen in this fashion, I was like, okay, we're on to something here. And that really expands out as you get into the other books too.
Okay. All right. So you mentioned that it's an ensemble cast. I think it's like 6 to 8 main characters.
I don't count them, but yeah, you're up there.
Okay. Yeah. Well, no, but I mean, I think, and I know in my review, I kind of broke them down, and then after I published it, I realized that I'd forgotten one, but when I record my videos, I do one take,
That's okay.
and go. And so I'm like, oh, I missed that. Yeah, it's gone now. So, but how did you decide to use that many points of view in this story?
I think I went with what was going to tell you the most complete picture of the universe. And the characters all had to have kind of distinct arcs. And the arcs go not only through the first 3 books, but go into 5, 6, 7, 8 books down the road. So where are these characters going to go, and how are they going to go there? And how is that going to play out? And so you kind of almost retrofit going, where do I want to be in 10 books, and how am I going to get there with what characters? Now, the first 3 books are going to focus on this ensemble, but the next book after that's an anthology of short stories set during Land and Sea. The book after that is a completely different standalone book on a particular, operation. So there's a lot of twists and turns with this, and I just think it's a lot of fun.
Okay. So sorry, just wanted to bring that up. So we've got one person who's already bought the audiobook.
Thank you.
But apparently Brandon Sanderson has priority.
What am I going to do? It's good to know I'm on the list.
That's fair. Exactly. If you're on that list, it's like, okay, yeah. I mean, I can't be doing too poorly. So, but with those characters, okay, you mentioned that they've all got their own arc. And while when I was reading it, it definitely felt like one complete story. The arcs also felt like complete individual stories, because unless I'm mistaken, they don't interact at all.
Not in that book. The beauty of an ensemble cast, and one of the reasons I wanted to go there, and I insisted on it. If you remember Game of Thrones, especially not so much if you read it, but if you actually watched the series, what you enjoy are the pair-ups, the unusual pair-ups. So you put Brienne of Tarth in with Jaime Lannister or Podrick Payne, and it's like, these are unlikely characters that you bring together that become interesting because they're together. So book 1 is, I call, a world building book. It sets a foundation. I don't have to do that in the following books. So, you've got the character Adam Kane, who, when you read his arc in Splashdown, it's not action-packed at all.
No.
it's Adam Kane. What you get is the character building of Adam Kane. Here's a guy that refuses to accept that he's divorced, has no relationship with his daughter. He's a pain in the ass for the army. They've sent him off to what they consider like the worthless post. He's a gray beard warrior. He's been there, done that, and nobody gives a shit. His character is very different. What happens with him when you start book 2. And so it's, some of this is just building the characters out so that they're solid, and that you go, okay, I know who this guy is, and I like where this guy is going. And some of the characters don't make it all the way through.
Spoiler alert, geez.
Well, yeah. There's a few deaths here and there, and there's character. What a lot of people don't realize is when you get into Riptides, you're going to realize, I don't want to say I did a bait and switch on you, but the character you thought was being developed wasn't the character that is important. It's the other person that was important. And I don't want to ruin it too much, but there's characters that will emerge in the second book that you're going to go, that's that guy. Yeah, I remember him. And, then you're going to go, oh, well, okay, that's kind of cool that this is now a different focus. And there were always plans to do that too. So it's a lot of fun.
Okay. So with all the characters, now I don't think you were checking any boxes. Okay, I'm going to put that one out there just up front. No.
I am such an anti-box checker. I can assure you, I was not checking.
No, right.
I have a box that says "Do not check any boxes."
Did you check it?
Yes.
No, broke the rule already. No. Anyway, no. I that was more of a setup. Sorry, I paused at really weird spots. No, but I know you weren't checking any boxes, but the characters are, to use a word, diverse. So because I mean we've got an Asian high school girl, we've got a Hispanic Marine, we've got well, actually most of them it's not really even specified. You may assume it's a white guy or girl, but it's never specified that I recall for many of them. So what was your thought process for coming up with the main characters?
I wanted a cross section of what America looks like, because this is a battle for, this trilogy is focused mostly on the United States. You're going to get views of what's going on around the world through other parts, especially in the second book and third book. But in reality, this is all about the United States. The United States is a diverse group. The fact that someone's Black or Hispanic or whatever doesn't actually feed into defining who they are as a person in the book. And I believe that is true with most people, that, it's the content of their character is what defines them. And that's what I focused on. The fact that they happen to be Hispanic, well, you've got to have some representation of that community in the book, and that just makes sense.
Okay, no, I was just curious because I more wanted to dispel the myth of checking the boxes.
Oh no, God no! There wasn't like a list of what we got to do, what do we have to check and how do we have to check it and stuff like that. You got to bear in mind the book is set in 2039, so a lot of the crap we're going through as a nation right now is past history at that point.
Sure.
That makes it a lot easier. And I only think I have one reference in any of the novels to that. There's someone who's a prostitute. The guy calls her a prostitute and he goes, "Oh, I'm sorry. I probably should have called you a sex worker." And she's like, "Hey, it's not the 2020s. I know what a prostitute is. I'm a prostitute." And that's how I addressed it. Cause it was like, let's just, let's go through that, because I write true crime books and I've had people correct me on podcasts before when I'd say, "Well, this person was a prostitute." "Oh, you can't say that. They're a sex worker." "No, they're a prostitute. I read the police report. It said prostitute." And it's like, "Well, no, but you can't say that. It offends them." And I'm like, I think they know they're prostitutes. And what we're talking about is from the 1970s. I'm pretty sure that's what we called them then. We didn't call, if you walked in 1970 and said sex worker, you'd be confusing a lot of people. But I look at it very much in terms of a lot of the turmoil and strife that we're going through right now as a nation, trying to wrap our heads around this box checking exercise that's out there that everyone seems to want to impose is just past history at this point. I'm not going to dwell on that. This is not a political series. If you want to read my political stuff, you read Blue Dawn and you read my political thrillers, which are deliberately political.
Oh my.
Yeah, you want to read those? Those are political, and I'm unabashed about it. There's none of that stuff at all within Land and Sea. It's just about military sci-fi and stuff.
Let's just say I got distracted about halfway. I mean, I get distracted all over the place, but I got distracted about halfway through the second Blue Dawn novel. So yeah, when you say that one's political, that's why I'm like, oh my, yes.
Oh yeah. There's a place for it. There's a place not for it. I know the difference.
And especially when you set the expectation, Land and Sea absolutely sets an expectation of this is going to be action. This is going to be, I don't want to call it intrigue, but kind of that's the best word that I'm coming up with at the moment. No, that's a horror. Actually, no, there's a little bit of that in there. There's the between the reporter and the tech billionaire.
It's funny. A lot of people have told me today they really like Dina Blaze, the reporter character, and I'm like,
really?
You realize she's the most reprehensible character.
Oh, she is a horrible person.
She's a horrible person, and people are like, "Yeah, but she's so genuine." It's like you she's that way, and that's how she is. And I'm like, yeah, well, she kind of does represent the worst aspects of the mainstream media amplified.
Don't get me wrong. She is a fantastic character, but she is a horrible person.
Oh, yeah.
So, all right. So we've got all of these main characters. They're all going through their own stories in this book. how, like, moving forward, is there a plan to bring them together, or at least bring some of them together at certain points and whatnot?
Yeah, they will. Definitely starting in book 2, you're going to see some of these characters interact, and it's going to be funny and weird and everything at the same time. Because, some of these characters, when you put them in the room together, are oil and water. It's just going to be...
Kane probably gets along with everybody, right?
Well, but it's what you would expect from characters like this. They're very dynamic characters, and in this book, they're very much on their own. There's a couple of times we bring characters together, but it's brief. The second book, you're going to see some of these characters come together, and you're going to go, okay, this is weird, and you're going to go. There's parts of it I think they're going to make people feel a little awkward, and that's very deliberate too. I'm not going to spoil it or anything, but yeah, as we go forward, these pairings are going to be a lot of fun for me as the author.
I bet. So of these characters, who's your favorite?
Hands down, I can't tell you who's my favorite in the second and third books, but overall, Adam Kane's my favorite character. Because Adam Kane is a graybeard. He's an old guy. He's been there. He's done that. I'm 60 years old. I get that. He doesn't take shit from anybody. But there's a part of him that has a naive charm to him, that he just doesn't accept what life's given him. He's trying desperately to cling to the family that he's lost. And there's something very endearing about that. And what I put the guy through is really rough. The other character that I enjoyed the most in the first book is Natalia Falto. I think she's a great character. I mean, she's tough as nails. She's had a rough upbringing, but she wants to be the best of the best. She's training with the best of the best. I'm not going to ruin it for people, but her arc is a tough one, and it was hard, but it was well worth it. And you're just I know I did okay, because my editor sent me notes for the last book, and she's like, the last 4 or 5 chapters, she said, I cried here. I cried here. I cried here. And I was like, if I made her cry, I did okay.
So, and actually, let's talk about Falto for a second. So, there's a lot of talk today about the strong female character.
Oh yeah.
Okay. Right. Now, I do think she is well, let me rephrase that. I think she will be a strong female character. Did you intentionally write her as she's a Lance Corporal and she's made some screw ups, and because it seems like, instead of just like she comes in and she kicks ass and she does everything right, it's like, nope, screwed up here. Nope, you did this wrong. But then you see her develop, and you see her take that private under her wing, at that, like, oh, if she doesn't get him up to speed, he's gone.
They'll frag him.
Yeah. But even then, and actually he was a fairly minor character, and I think even he ended up growing and developing, at least like right there at the end, you get a glimmer of hope for him. That everything will work out.
Falto's a great character because you don't have to make a strong female character be, tough as nails only. I mean, she has a very compassionate side to her, and she knows she's part of a team, and that's core and essence of a Marine, is that identity, etc. And I like the fact that there's a mothering side to her, without using the word mothering,
Right. Lack of a better term at the second.
Yeah. I mean, I think she is a tough female character, right? And it's how I think you should write a tough female character. It's not about her being female. It's about her being just a strong character who happens to be female.
Mm-hmm.
And that was always the intent with her was, and I love it when she shows up in, the barracks and everybody starts giving her the business. It's like, she's only going to put up with so much of that shit. There's a point where it's like, okay, it's cute that you're doing this, but let's knock that shit off.
Well, regardless, I mean, honestly, I loved all the characters. They were overall, all of them, a lot of fun. I felt that, when the chapter ended, I was a little disappointed because it's like, no, I want to know what's coming next. But then I'm excited because it's like, oh no, I get to see what's happening with that other person that I left 4 chapters back or whatever. Yeah. So
it's difficult when you're doing an ensemble book to do it and flow it. But this group of characters was so easy to do because they really spoke to me, and they're fun characters to be around. They're guys that you would sit down and go, I would like to have a beer with that person,
Even the drug dealer.
Antonio Colton's a great character because, I know guys with PTSD and I get what he's going through. He's a drug dealer, but he won't sell to kids. He has this moral focus in him that makes him somehow redeemable from the fact that he's dealing drugs.
Oh yeah, no, the scene with him and the psychiatrist, where she actually, like, you set it up where he's like, nope, I'm going to ignore all of this. They're making me do it. And so I'm just going to give them all the answers that they're expecting. And then the way you use her to actually like develop the character and just pull that in, like it felt like you were pulling that information out of him.
Oh, yeah.
As opposed to just writing a scene.
Oh yeah. Well, and he ends up in a great heroic situation where he comes to grips with who he really is. And, that's what he's been missing in his life. And I think everybody goes through that in their own life, and not the way he does, obviously, but, it's just very different. And I think, thank you, Warlander TV. I appreciate that. But when you watch a character like Antonio Colton, you go, well, this guy's not got when he starts out, you're like, a drug dealer. Ooh, I don't want to deal with this. But then by the time you're at the end of the book, you're like, oh yeah, he's kicking ass. This is great. Damn right. I was with him all the way. You lie to yourself about him. And I think that's always important with a good character is you could also realize, okay, I may have gotten that part wrong.
Okay. Now I may have missed this. Is he an Asher Rig pilot too? Or no. Okay, no. Got it. I started thinking about it and I'm like, because
I will give you a sneak. Yeah. What's great about him, when Brent and I were doing this, we were like, what are the aspects of the Battletech universe that we like? And we were like, mercenaries are really good. We always, because everybody gyrates to mercenaries in Battletech. I said, we cannot have mercenaries. Can't do that. But what we can have is private militia. Guys who band together to go fight the bad guy, the aliens. And so I will tell you, Colton is going to form a militia unit from the hood. And it's going to be, and I'm going to tell you, they are fun. It's a neat group, and they're very different than your normal military operation. And it opens up a lot of cool stuff from a gaming perspective, but from a writing perspective, it opens up so much for other writers who will be writing in this series to be able to write about militia units. They can form their own unit, basically.
Okay, I was not ready for that, but that actually sounds a lot of fun. So let's see. So we've covered Colton, we've covered Falto, Kane. Here might be an awkward question for you. Who's your least favorite character?
Jay Drake, the tech giant.
Oh, the tech giant. Okay, right.
The amalgamation of every evil tech giant person in the world, amplified. This is a guy that tears down his old high school because he's pissed at how he was treated as a kid. He buys his old high school and has it torn down. I mean, what a jackass. He's like, he's a character that his arc really doesn't change a lot. He's bad for all the wrong reasons. He's just he's totally self-centered. He's actually based on a guy I know, and it's not really fair because the real Jay is a great guy, but Jay was always focused on himself. And I was like, what if I took that and then threw in Bill Gates, Elon Musk, and Adolf Hitler? And I ended up with the Jay Drake character, and it's like, look, I'm pro-business, etc., and I'm very conservative, but you know what? Some guys running businesses are just jackasses. and so it's a character that even I don't like, and he's designed not to be likable. And I think that's kind of fun to play with a little bit because, there's got to be somebody he's not the bad guy in this, but he's certainly not the good guy.
That's fair.
He's one that we're going to have some fun with way down the road. But right now, he's a bit of a dick.
Just a little bit. Do you ever find it difficult to write characters that you don't like, or?
Well, I have a good time with it. You can tell
Okay.
I'm laughing right now. I have fun when I do any of the characters. It's hard to do some scenes. I will say that there are some scenes that are very hard to do, but
okay.
Doing the characters, no, it's easy to write about the good characters and the bad characters.
Okay. So all right, so we've got Jay Drake, the reporter, the Lance Corporal, Cece. So
Yeah.
she's a little bit of a mystery because to me, when I was reading it, it seems like you're trying to tell someone else's story from her perspective. Is that fair, or is she actually, or am I totally discounting?
No. Cece, sometimes as a writer, you don't want to necessarily have the reader see that character through their own eyes. You're going to tell it through through other eyes and through other actions. Her character arc is one that I absolutely, next to Adam Kane, Cece's my favorite. And some other ones that we won't talk about, but because there's some new characters you get introduced to, but Cece's character is different, and you get your exposure to her from her dad and from others, and she's a kid, and I wanted to establish that in this book. She's a kid who is going to lose her dad, and we see that.
That's that's actually a spoiler to me.
Sorry.
No. No.
Well, she loses his picture during the attack on Guam. I thought it was kind of, but there's a few twists with that. So
okay, no, that's fine. I was just gonna say, because the internet could cut out, his phone could have gotten damaged. What I don't know. So if he's dead, like I said, that is
let's put it this way: I didn't spoil anything yet.
Okay.
But there's some characters that we lose track of during all this. I think Cece is a lot like the Adam Kane character. This was the foundation for who she is, and now you're going to see some changes that are dramatic, especially in Riptides. Riptides, you see Cece become a different person, and that's part of her evolution, and there's a lot of reasons for that.
Okay, so she's not going away, and she is going to become more involved then.
Yeah, I feel a little guilty because she attended the Barbara Walters Academy, and then Barbara Walters died last week. So I had nothing to do with that. I swear to God.
Well, why else would it have been named in her honor?
I know. I felt really bad about that. There's certain things that trigger you. And it's like, oh God, really?
So, let's see. Sorry, I got, like I said, I literally sent this to like everyone I knew. And so like my brother is actually listening. So hi, Dave. Let's see. Who else are we? Oh, the naval officer. Okay.
Titus Hill.
Yes. So So he is, I guess you would call it like, what would it be? Right place, wrong time, or wrong place, right? I don't know. He clearly wasn't supposed to be there. I mean, obviously he was as from the story perspective.
Oh yeah,
but...
well, you're dealing with undersea aliens. I got to have a sub, and he ends up the captain just through circumstances he ends up in command, and let's put it this way, that's when you see a character either rise or fall, and he rises. And I like that aspect of him. You will get to see he has a really funky arc, but his arc in book 2 is something no one will guess where I'm going with him, because his ship is badly damaged at the end of this book, and horrifically so.
Oh yeah, because they were at the end of the book, they're trying to get to Washington,
Kitsap,
I believe.
Yeah, they're trying to get up to Seattle, Kitsap, to get into the base.
Right. And where did you specify in the book where exactly they were in the Pacific?
Yeah, I did. I actually pinned down where they were at, etc. But yeah, it was pretty. They go through a lot, and it's just a fun ride with that character. I just wanted, because there's some stuff down the road where we're going to need guys like him, and I had to establish him in this book, and being able to put him in that sub that way was just so much fun. And I really got to channel my Hunt for Red October and Crimson Tide vibes, for this. He's a tough guy, but he's in a real crappy situation. I mean, even an experienced captain is in over their heads going against aliens that have the technology that these aliens have.
Right. And we'll get into that in just a second. I just want to make sure we've covered all the characters, because I truly do love all of the characters. They were fun. This, like I said, you like they were contributing to an overall story. Like you said, you were trying to get this whole picture, and they were, the stories were interesting all the way along. So I want to make sure we cover all of them. Who haven't we talked about?
No, I think we've hit all of the main ones for this book.
Okay. All right. So then, all right. So, okay. Because I want to talk a little bit more about the aliens, but should we talk about aliens or Ashers first?
Wherever you want to go to. I'm game.
Well, I mean, we're going to cover both. I'm just saying, like, story-wise.
I think it's fun talking about the aliens because they're very different. They're very different.
Well, okay. So, all right. My big complaint, I would say, from my review, we don't have a name.
Oh, we do in book 2. They're called the Fish. and you're laughing, but if you think about it, the military will have some sort of designation. The military has designations for each of the alien species, like a class 2 alien, a class 3 alien. But the actual guys out in the field call them crabs, bosses. Because these would be guys in 2039 that have been raised on video games. So when they see the big ebony creature that's slashing everything, they're going to go, that's the biggest guy in the battlefield. That's the boss. So I just played to that. I was like, and they don't know where these aliens come from. So it's not like we could say these are the Colossians and they're from Kalos 9 or whatever. We have no freaking idea where they're coming from. And so the concept is in book 2, we established they call them the Fish. And that's kind of now the accepted terms for what they are. Even though they're technically not, you could argue they're not fish, and somebody's going to go, well, crabs are crustaceans and blah, blah, blah. And
I'm not worried about the technicalities. Yes,
we call them the Fish. And all I can tell you is seafood's back on the menu, boys.
Real quick, I'm gonna point this out just because I think it's hilarious. My brother-in-law apparently is also watching, and he sent a comment in our little group chat. He said, "In 2039, tickle crabs takes on a new meaning."
All right, he won.
So, now obviously you're developing a game on this, but I'm assuming we haven't seen all of the different fish that are
Oh, hell
yet.
no. Oh no, we'll be even in book 5. We're releasing. There's new species that you'll see. The aliens are constantly trying to find ways to get to us and get at us, and they use genetic engineering to do that. What makes these aliens very different is they don't build guns and tanks and weapons. Everything that they do is biologically or chemically based, and so it's part of who they are. And so instead of a laser beam, they use high pressure water on a magnetic field that cuts just like a laser. They spray gas that is caustic. They do all sorts of stuff that, frankly, you put, if this was a straight up fight against the Russians and the Americans, it would be very, gun battle-y, very straight up military action. This throws the United States military and the militaries of the world into a lot of chaos because these guys are using weapons and stuff we haven't seen before.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm gonna save the magnetized water jet for a comment here in a little bit, because we'll just say that kind of creeped me out.
Okay, well, job done. It's supposed to creep out. This has a Cthulian feel to it at times.
Oh no, not that. No, just the particular story where it's first introduced.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Actually, I guess we'll bring that up. So
there's a shock value.
A bit. So, in the book, I didn't know what else to call them in my review, so I called them building chapters. And that's cycle 1, cycle 2, cycle 3, cycle 4. Yeah. And I called them that just because they seemed like a collection of short stories.
Yes.
That weren't part of the actual narrative. I mean, they were, but I mean, they're not that core narrative, because every single time it seemed like it was new characters, new places, and just, hey, here's a snapshot of this little place.
Yeah.
Okay. Are you going to develop any of those stories further, or
yes.
I mean, are we going to? Okay.
There's one in book 3 that we see in Boston that becomes kind of almost a novella size thing in book 4, which is an anthology. There's a whole bunch of anthologies, but the large story in book 4 is actually the characters and stuff that you see initially in book 3. So some of these are almost like Easter eggs that get blown out into other, though you'll see them in future products kind of going out. It's kind of fun that way too.
And if no plans now, there may be later on, if,
Yeah, they're fertile ground for us to play with. What we really want to do is show kind of the creep factor of these aliens showing up and nobody knowing that they're there. I got a video today of somebody saying, "Hey, look at this crazy fish that somebody pulled up in the North Sea."
Is that the what, like the little red starfish?
Yeah. And my first reaction was, "Oh crap!"
You posted it. I finished the book, and I'm like, especially because it looks like it's looking at you.
Yes, and but it's funny, if you look for weird sea stories and stuff in Google, there's stuff every week that's being pulled up out of the oceans that looks weird, and it's kind of funny because it's like, hey, it's free advertising.
Yeah.
I'm like that guy that's on Ancient Aliens. I'm not saying it's aliens, but it's aliens.
Right. No, I mean, so yeah, that, but yeah, so let me stop and regroup. In cycle 1, the beach scene in Oregon.
Yeah.
Are we going to get any closure, or is that done?
I have no plans on going further with that. Brent does, however, have a concept piece of art for that.
Oh, geez. So for the audience,
I mean, quite literally, there's that scene is very graphically shown.
Yeah, for the audience, I'm trying not to spoil it because I remember when I was reading it, and okay, I'll put it this way. When the watch fell off,
yeah,
that was a hit to me. That was a shock.
yeah, you have to do that to make people understand that there's a risk associated with this. Because then as you read each story, you're going, okay, am I going to get a scene that is it going to culminate in something like that?
Yeah. What? Oh crap! I mentioned it in my review, and I remember sending it to you, over Twitter. Sorry, I want to find this because I want to quote it. Oh, come on. I'm nothing if not professional at this.
That's okay. I don't.
I went too far. Okay. Keywords so far for me: fear, tension, anticipation. Mostly fear. And then I realized that I have half of the book left, and I keep waiting for people to die.
Yeah, it's war, so people are going to die, and you're going to lose characters in this series. That's the nature of this beast. So, that's part of this, and you're dealing with an enemy that does not demonstrate fear. They embody fear, but they don't have fear. And that makes them a very scary opponent to deal with.
Yeah, they actually, outside of, we'll call it the boss in, if I recall correctly, it was the final scene in Guam.
Okay.
I don't even think, because I don't think any of them have quote unquote talked yet.
No.
Yeah, so there's no interaction. It's just like the boss is doing something with a character, again, not spoiling anything for anyone, and just it moves on. So yeah, they absolutely, and that's the funny thing for me. I don't go typically for scary stories or gory stories, which I don't think you put any real gore in here. At least nothing that would be out of place or inappropriate, I would say. But
there's a few surprises.
Yeah. and a lot of tension. Like I said, I mean, I would finish a chapter and be upset because I want to know what's next for that particular character. But then you're going into a new story or a new chapter, and it's like, oh, wait a second. Is this going to be the chapter where this person dies?
Yeah.
Or this thing happens? Or, is the submarine going to survive? Or, is the cargo ship going to capsize? Whatever it is. I think you did really well at building that tension, and especially in those cycle chapters, where the cycle chapters just ramp the tension up. And then most of the regular chapters kind of bring it down, make you think, okay, maybe it's not so bad. And then you go to another cycle chapter that is now farther down the story. And so the fish are actually, they're ramping things up. They're making it harder. And you're like, oh, wait a second. So you've now pushed it up to another level and let it drop down. And then another. So it's
a technique.
Yeah. Well, you did very well at it. So
thank you.
There's that. Let's see. I'm trying to, anything else we should know about the book?
When you look at the book, I think what a lot of people are doing is they're going, well, this doesn't feel like a Battletech book. Well, duh, it's not a Battletech book.
Good.
This is true combined arms. This is true squad level combat. A lot of the action you're going to see is on the ground, not huge battle, but the actions of small units, which is, exciting stuff. You get a lot more up close and personal with that type of stuff. There's a lot of different tech. You're going to see a lot more with the GRDs, the ground robotic drones. The Oshers, I think we introduced, 3 or 4 in the book. You really don't super see one other than the Lion class in battle. You do see another one, in battle, but you don't get it as a character view type thing. It's more of it's off in the background fighting type thing. You're going to see a lot more battles as we go forward, but I think a lot of people thought, coming from a Battletech background, I was going to be writing about a whole book of big stompy robot stuff, and it's like, no, we're building a whole universe here, and that's only a part of it.
Yeah, I absolutely, well, I mean, based on some of our interactions is part of why I came over to this, part because, friends with Brent, but then also big part was the big stompy robots. So I will admit the big stompy robots were a little disappointing in this book, not in their design or their function.
You wanted more of them.
I wanted more of them.
All right. It's up for pre-sale right now, so you can go pre-order it.
Right. So, I wanted to kind of make a point that was a little disappointing to me. It didn't take away from the story. It was just, for Battletech fans, I guess we'll say, what would you say to reassure them that they're going to get their big stompy robots?
We have a ton of Osher rigs. If you go up now on Amazon, you could look at the cover of book 2 and see the Rhino. So
okay,
it's out there. There's plenty of different rigs you will see in action as the story progresses. This is the building of the Foundation, and the Foundation isn't mechs. The Foundation is people. It's characters, and it's the universe itself. The mechs and stuff are not what are going to drive this. I don't want people to become adored necessarily with a mech and be sweating over how fast it goes and all of that at this point, and how the loadouts work and how much chain gun ammo do you need and how you're going to reload it and stuff like that. You don't need that to be able to tell a good story. The mechs are a part of this universe, and they are a huge part of it. The Osher rigs are sophisticated, but they're not 3-story war machines. They're like 12 feet tall.
Right. That was actually one thing I was thinking, like, for the gamers, would you say it's more along the lines of like heavy gear style mecha, or, because clearly they're not Battletech style.
Yeah, they're more like amped up elemental type suits in some respect.
I should have used that one.
What's that James Cameron movie just came out to the sequel with Avatar? They're very much, the larger suits are like the combat's, mecha in Avatar. It's that size. When we did the miniatures, are 28 millimeter scale, and they were designed so that we're going to do a whole bunch of them at some point where you could actually paint the miniature of the guy and then put him in the cockpit of the mech. So that you get that vibe. So it's all part of it. They're not 3-story war machines. This isn't a reskinning of Battletech at all. There's no galaxy spanning empires. There's no great houses. This is a very near term United States and world that you're dealing with, and you're going to be having to deal with an alien threat. I think that's pretty far off from Battletech.
Well, and it's definitely written in in such a way. I keep saying it just to keep you interested and keep you excited. My channel's called Gaming with ADHD for a reason. I am all over heck, just what I've messaged you about the number of different games. You can tell that I'm all over the place. I've actually struggled. I used to read 500 to 1,000 page novels, all the time. I literally read Wheel of Time. Okay. I had to fight through Hour of the Wolf. I had this halfway done 4 days after you sent it to me. Okay. The rest of it still went quickly, but also a little slower, but that's for other reasons. But it is done very well. You're definitely building up a series and a story that is compelling and is interesting to watch or to read. Real quick, another third-party comment about the crabs. A friend of mine says, it seems like a name we would use because sailors have been fighting crabs in foreign ports for a very long time.
Yeah, but I got to be honest with you. Let me pull up my miniature. I got one of the prototypes here.
What? Oh, oh, that's gorgeous.
Yeah. So that's 28 millimeters. So just picture your standard infantry guy is like that tall.
Hold on. Yeah. So
he's only going to be up to that level on him.
Oh,
so this is going to be fun. This is. So I got to tell you, if you're a sailor and you got a bunch of these in your pants, you got problems.
All right. So we've definitely got more Ashers coming. I do think they were they're an interesting design. The way that they're described, like I said, there wasn't a lot of them, but I do also like that you brought in I think it was two training scenes.
Oh yeah.
Where it's there weren't any stakes, quote unquote, but talking about tactics about how to fight against an Asher rig.
And you were dealing with the Russian rig. That's one of my favorite scenes, honestly, and it's so stupid that I like it. But I've had two military guys reach out to me and go, "That's so accurate," because the scene where he's debriefing them on the Russian rig, and he's like, "Get up here, pull it apart, put it back together, check how everything's attached." He goes, "That's very much what you see in a military operation when they train. It's like, come over to this tank, check it out, crawl on it, look at it." That was very deliberately designed that way. And I wanted that vibe to it. And in the back of everybody's mind, I've had people go, "So this is going to be about the Russians and the Americans fighting it out." And I was like, man, you are so way off. The Russians were a problem before, but the Russians are not the problem now. And boy, how the Russians deal with the fish.
Are we going to see that in this trilogy, or
is that? You will get that in some of the cycle chapters, as well as some of the dialogue of how the Russians deal with us, and it's interesting. It's very interesting because the Russians have a certain level of brutality that's shocking even to all of us. So, it's going to be fun. There's a lot of things I get to play with here.
Okay, so we've got the trilogy. Book 2 is up for pre-order. I will find a link for that, everyone, and I'll put that down below later. But also the link to the first one will show the second one, so you can just pre-order it that way.
Yeah.
But the third one I think is coming out in March.
Yeah. Storm Surge.
Okay. So that I assume that one's not up for pre-order yet.
Not yet.
Okay. But does come out in March, so that's good. So it's not like we have to wait on any of this.
Oh, no. That was something when we docked with the Boardgate guys, it was real important. We were like, look, we don't want fans to get a book and then have to wait 6 or 7 months to get the second book. Because by the time you've read the first book, you're going, okay, now I kind of want to jump into the second one. It's still fresh in my mind. If you wait 6 months, it's like, okay, now I got to go back and kind of skim through the first book to see where I was before I can jump in. If they're coming out once a month, it's going to be really good. And I've already completed book 5.
Oh, wait, so book 4 is an anthology. So book 5 is another novel, or are you talking?
Book 5 is a complete standalone book.
Okay.
We don't have a title yet. I have 8 titles, and I've told the creative Juggernaut team, you're going to have to help me whittle this down. Because and to do that, you're going to have to read the book, because they do anyway. But we've really got to settle on a title for it. But it's a complete standalone book. The anthology is a lot of fun because it just takes you to some different cities and different perspectives of what's going on in those cities, which is just a blast. And you get to see a lot of different units. You're going to get to see pararescue. You're going to get to see some underwater stuff. You're going to get to see all sorts of cool, really fun stuff.
Okay. Let's see. So are those, you said book 5 is done. I'm assuming the anthology is done.
Yep.
So theoretically, are we going to see are we just going to keep putting it out?
Yeah.
Every month?
Not every month. I'm not going to commit to every month. I can tell you the first 3 books will come out every month.
Okay.
On a month. I'm not going to make commitments to Wargate's schedule.
Fair enough.
But I will say this: they are very committed to us having at least 6 books out this year.
Okay.
I've already had a couple of authors reach out and go, hey, can I write for this? And the answer is yes. We want other authors writing in this. I'll write the heavy lifting stuff. The next year, there'll be another trilogy. We're thinking each year we're going to do a trilogy with an ensemble cast each time.
A new ensemble cast?
A new ensemble cast. A new ensemble cast. Although I will say, in some of these books, you will get to see cameos of some of the characters that you're seeing in the first trilogy. So there's some fun stuff there, which is kind of fun because those characters may come back in a larger capacity at some point down the road, especially a couple of them I've got some plans for.
Okay. So I guess with that, because I also I threw this. We're both in the Writer Dojo group on Facebook, and I threw it in there as well. In case there are any aspiring authors that may want to contribute, say, to the anthology or something, is there a way they can?
Yeah, you can just engage with me. I'm on social media. I'm easy to access. My email's all over the place. Which is good and bad. But no, I'll be happy to have a discussion with you about it. We have a writer's guide. It's incredibly rough. But we have a writer's guide just so that gives you kind of a foundation. And we've actually got some stories that we want to tell. Brent has come up with a really interesting story that's probably a 2-booker in terms of scope. And we're looking for the right guy to come in and write that. I think it's a really interesting thing, and you get to destroy an American city, and that's going to be fun. It's one of those things. It's great. I think people are going to have a really fun time with this, and I think we've had a couple of authors reach out to us already. I'm excited about it, and because I'm like, look, I'll write the big books where we're going to change or add to the knowledge here of what we're dealing with. But after that, we've got plenty of room for other authors to weigh in.
Okay. That I wasn't expecting it to go that direction, but that's awesome to hear.
Oh, I want anybody. If you've got an interest, man, and you've enjoyed the first book and you want to write, get a hold of me. If you've got an idea, let's talk about it. And if you don't have an idea, let's talk. Maybe we can come up with a good idea.
I have too many distractions as it is, Blaine. Stop tempting me.
I know. You know what? Look, somebody gave me a break years ago at FASA and allowed me to do my writing. And, you gotta be willing to look for good writers out there who are excited about doing a project, who are willing to learn the craft as they go.
Mm-hmm. And sorry, I got distracted on a couple of things. No, exactly. It's especially when you're trying to not just write a book that or trilogy that, you know, you're going to write it and it's done and gone. No, you're setting it up for, you know, what novels are coming next. What are, you know, what's it's actually kind of interesting that you mentioned that, but you know, what's going to happen when you're not available anymore, for lack of a better way to put it.
Well, yeah, there's got to be other writers who will be able to pick us up and run with it, and you know, we're going to have to build that capability in. We're starting a franchise at ground zero, and that's kind of an exciting time to be a part of it. And you know, when you get in early, you get to see all sorts of stuff. Unfortunately, you also get to see how the sausage is made. So,
which actually, that's, oh my gosh, we're coming down on time, but that actually just made me think of something. I kind of went into this where you had started with Battletech after it was already established, but even though we've talked multiple times, you were there basically at the beginning.
yeah,
I mean, not exactly close enough.
Yeah, but I mean, pretty damn early.
Yeah. And so now, essentially now you've, and even more because you were there for Renegade Legion as well when that got started. Yeah. So we've now basically helped, or you're launching your third universe, you know, that theoretically this third one is, well, the third one's going on at least a year as far as the books are concerned.
Yeah, believe me, it's been selling well and the feedback's been so good. This is going to be going on for a while.
But my question was going to be, how is creating a new universe different now from the other two times that you've done it?
The players, I'm working with a great team. Eric Crew, Kevin Hughes, and Brent Evans over on the Creative Juggernaut side. Walt, Jason Ansbaugh, and Lauren, my editor, who's phenomenal, and Nick Cole over on Wordgate have been great. I mean, they have been, and I showed this to somebody else earlier today. I mean, Walt's sending me stuff like this.
Oh, wow.
and the Ranger manual and stuff, so that it's like, look, let's make sure we're keeping these militarily close to where we are now anyway. 20 years is down the road, but you know, let's be honest, there's going to be some changes, but you know, so I'm getting better at my craft because of the team that I work with. And the guys over at Wargate are phenomenal. The Creative Juggernaut team, it was great being in on this at the beginning because we had the right people. And I don't think when you've got you get some of these egos that come into some of these franchises and stuff and try tossing their weight around, it does make it difficult in some cases. And I'm not going to name any names or go through specifics, but there's a lot of times you get people who they get a puffed up ego and kind of toss their weight around. And it makes it difficult to have a collaborative event because it becomes, well, I know more than anybody else, and this is the way we ought to go type thing. And when you go down that, it just takes the fun out of it. Right.
Yeah. I mean, especially because, you know, towards the end of your time with Battletech, I mean, it had been around almost 40 years. So, yeah, you know, now you have no restrictions and you have a little bit of power.
Yeah, it's a lot more fun. And I don't have the burden of 40 years of canon that I've got, you know, people out there on the internet going, well, you violated the canon here. You know, this is what the lore says. And I'm like, you know, there's been a couple of times when I've gone to people and go, don't tell me what the lore is. I wrote that lore. You know, like,
I was there when the magic was written.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I had some guy giving me a lecture on Snords Irregulars, and I was like, dude, don't go there. That was my unit, and I'm pretty sure I know what I wrote because I have it 15 feet from me if I need it, you know? But there's always somebody out there that's a self-proclaimed expert in that. And I don't have any of that burden when it comes to land and sea at all. And I like that. I like the fact that we're creating the lore and getting it off the ground. I think it's going to be a franchise that's going to be out here for quite a while. And there's some really exciting stuff. I can't go into it now, but there's some exciting announcements that are going to be coming where I think people are going to go, okay, this is different in many respects from where Battletech is going and what they're doing. And it's just going to be fun for the fans. There's going to be ways for them to engage and be a part of the universe, etc. And I think it's going to be a good time.
Awesome. So I'm going to guess, and I know you're not going to confirm or deny, but you're probably talking about like, the planned games. Is there anything you can tell us about the upcoming games?
I did the design. It's 97 pages, 96 pages. I don't know. I haven't opened the file in a while. The design is done. It's role-playing and tabletop. So to me, it was very important to be able to create a character and put the character in a small unit and have that unit go into battle. To me, that's fun. The tabletop version of this is designed around small unit action. And to the point where a lot of times even ranges aren't going to be as big a factor as you might think, just because machine gun ranges are so long. When you put them on a tabletop, it's going to be okay. Everything's in range,
right?
It's a question of is it really close or not type thing. And I think that makes it a little more interesting. You're going to be dealing a lot with urban environments too. And I think those make for fun gaming experiences for people. We're going through what's called the development stage of this right now, where the design is taken and the math is refined, the rules are refined, etc. Matter of fact, in 2 weeks, I get to see the development release of the tabletop side of this. So I'll be able to sit and actually move minis on a map type thing and roll dice and kill things and, make sure that core mechanic is good. And then we got to integrate with the role-playing stuff that's already been developed too. Because there's a really, as you saw with the characters, there's a pretty diverse suite of characters that you can bring into this. Well, it gets very diverse as well from a role-playing perspective. There's just a ton of great opportunities. And I just wanted that capability for people. If you want to run a standard role-playing game, you can. If you want to fight out the battle as a tabletop thing, you can, or you can fight it out using the role-playing rules. Whatever floats your float. Well, I think what's really fun from our end too is we've had a good look. Brent and I bring a lot of experience, as does Eric and Kevin. We all bring some experience from the gaming industry into this. And we took a look at things like, how are we going to interact with the 3D printing crowd? Do you want to be that company that's sending out cease and desist letters, or how are you going to embrace 3D printing? Because you're not going to make it go away. And the fact that I held up this miniature, I guarantee you 8 people are already out scanning those pictures trying to so how are you going to, do you want to fight that, or do you want to embrace it? And we're going to take a very different strategy, I think, than a lot of companies do, like GW and even Catalyst, in terms of how we embrace 3D printing, et cetera. And I think you're going to find us to be a very friendly company, because I don't want to pay lawyers to write cease and desist letters. I'm just not into that. And If you're making the miniatures, well, it just tells me you're playing the damn game. And isn't that what we all want? So we got some refining to do on it, but I'm excited about that aspect of it. And we're gonna do some things that are just a little bit different and have some fun doing it.
So what you're saying is you're not putting out the Splashdown, or you're not putting out the Splashdown role-playing game under OGL 1.1.
Oh, hell no. No, we're going to have our own system, and there's a lot of good reasons for that, which will be painfully evident this week. I think that overnight, Wizards of the Coast has made Paizo a fortune, and Paizo has announced they're coming out with their ORC, the Orc licensing agreement, and I'm like, freaking brilliant. I think that they will do just fine. I think Wizards of the Coast, this approach of let's monetize every little thing is going to work strongly against them.
Sure.
I just don't, and I didn't like a lot of the direction that the future D&D was going. We start interjecting real world politics into a game, it ruins the game. There's just no other way to put it. People play games to get away from real world politics.
Oh, I absolutely agree. It's been really frustrating. I mean, I understand that there are those issues, and it's not to downplay any of them, but sometimes you just need to sit around the table with your friends and just have some fun.
Yeah.
So regardless, I'm excited for all of this.
Oh, it's going to be fun. Like I said, I'm a gamer. So for me, I'm looking forward to doing what I like to do, which is playing games.
Awesome. So, all right. I absolutely hate to do this, but it is 9:00. And so you and I'm going to end the stream, and you and I will actually say proper goodbyes off stream.
Right.
But is there anything that you want to shout out, anything you want to say, anything you want to, bring up before we end it?
Look, I am out here doing a lot of the press tour stuff, but Brent Evans deserves a shitload of credit for this.
I reached out to him
and Eric Crew and the guys at Catalyst. I'm also going to tell you, if you haven't looked at the suite of Boardgate books, there are some phenomenal writers there and phenomenal books and series that are worth looking at. Please take a look at those. Obviously, I encourage you to pick up Land and See Book 1 Splashdown. You're going to enjoy it, I hope. This is going to be a cool journey, and this is your opportunity to kind of get in on the ground floor.
All right. Well, everybody, I totally agree with everything Blaine just said. Thanks to Wargate for, picking up the series so that it didn't have to go to Kickstarter. That actually, I think, is a huge bonus, because I think we probably got it faster, in my opinion.
Yes, we did.
And also, just check out Splashdown. I literally had an absolute blast reading it. I am super excited for Riptide. I got the link and pre-ordered it literally immediately. So, unless Blaine sends me something early,
it could happen. We haven't talked to Wordgate about what we're doing for promotion, but it's entirely possible, because, I've reached out to a lot of, I like talking to various YouTubers and stuff out here who do small channels and stuff and broadcast, because they have a bigger reach than a lot of people realize.
Well, regardless, I really do appreciate it. I wasn't expecting it. It was I was planning on just getting the book on on release day. I just reached out to you because it was Thursday, and I try to do my interviews on Thursday. So I'm like, oh, maybe I can snag him for that. And then you sent it. So that was very kind, very generous. And I'm very, very grateful you did it. But I still bought my copy. So don't think you didn't get any money out of me anyways.
Thank you.
But regardless, I hope you will come back. If there's ever anything you want to promote, please let me know.
When Riptides comes out, let's do this again, because you're going to have a whole different set of questions.
Oh man, I am super excited for that. So, all right. Well, everybody, if you haven't yet, please do hit the like button. Make the YouTube algorithm realize that there's some good content here. And otherwise, thanks again for Blaine, to Blaine for coming. I can use words, I promise. But until next time, thank you for watching, and we'll see you then. Bye, everybody.